Today I'd like to bring up an old story about here and now, and how we sometimes miss the full joy of here and now when we get caught up in words and concepts, not to mention everything else we get caught up in. So this is case number 57 in the book of Serenity, called Yanyang's One Thing. Yanyang's single thing. And here's the introduction to the story. Playing with reflections to get at the form, you don't recognize that the form is the source of the reflections. Raising your voice to stop an echo, you don't know that the voice is the root of the echo. If it's not riding an ox, looking for an ox, then it's using a wedge to remove a wedge. How can you avoid these errors? Sometimes these introductions to the stories, I feel are not so lively and clear, but since this introduction, I think, is quite wonderful, before going on to the story, it's worth looking at this introduction. Playing with reflections to get at the form, you don't know that the form is the origin, the source of the reflections. Here, reflections like in a mirror or a shadow of a form. It's just any ideas we have about here and now. Any thoughts, concepts, ideas that we use to try to get at reality itself. And when we're using the ideas, kind of like now, anytime we're involved in talking about Dharma, like in a Dharma talk, then in a way we're using words and ideas to kind of get at the form. But we don't want to get caught up in forgetting that the form is actually the source of the reflections. In other words, the reality is the source for all the ideas about it. And remembering that, then we can engage in some ideas and thoughts and so on. The next line is raising your voice to stop an echo. You don't know that the voice is the root of the echo. This would be like, maybe we feel there is some conceptual overlay on reality that we want to stop this echo. So we raise our voice and say, make this echo stop, 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 stop. So raising our voice to stop an echo. We don't know that the voice is the root of the echo. Trying to cut through concepts with more concepts is often just creates a louder concept. these are kind of like classic Zen pointers, right? The next line is, if it's not riding an ox, seeking for the ox, then it's using a wedge to remove a wedge. They're all kind of different flavors of the same point. We're riding on the ox of reality, looking for the ox of reality. This is already it, but yet we're trying to get at it somehow. And if it's not that, then it's like using a wedge to remove a wedge, which is like a woodcutter cutting down a tree after hacking away to make a big notch in the tree. And rather than hacking some more, they sometimes might drive a big metal wedge into that cut, and then kind of just, if it's getting ready to fall, then the wedge might just do the last little bit. But then sometimes it happens that the big wedge actually just gets stuck in the notch in the tree. And one way to get the wedge out is to get another wedge and to knock that in another part of the crack, right? And you can pull out the first wedge, but the problem is now the second wedge is stuck. So you can get a third wedge to knock out the second wedge, but then the third wedge gets stuck, and then you get a fourth wedge. So this is how trying to understand Dharma sometimes can be. Again, trying to get at reality through words and concepts. So Wansong, the one who wrote this introductory verse, after these images, he says, well, how can you avoid these errors? That's the introduction to warm us up to the story. The story goes like this. The Venerable Yanyang, who was a student of the great ancestor Zhaozhou in 9th century China. Venerable Yanyang came to Zhaozhou and asked him, when not a single thing is brought, then what? Or you could translate it like, how is it when nothing at all comes up? And Zhaozhou said, put it down. And Yanyang said, if I don't bring a single thing, then what is there to put down? And Zhaozhou said, then carry it out with you. Or take it with you when you go. That's the story of these ancient venerables. And it doesn't say it right here in the root case, in the main story, but elsewhere it is mentioned that upon hearing this from Zhaozhou, at the conclusion of this short conversation, Yanyang realized great awakening. And later he became a successor of Zhaozhou. This conversation worked for Yanyang. So a little bit about Zhaozhou. I'm sure some of you know this great Tang Dynasty Zen teacher Zhaozhou, one of the greatest. In his time, there were various other teachers who used kind of drastic measures like hitting the students and shouting at the students. But Zhaozhou wasn't so into that. He just used these like turning words, simple turning words to turn the students about, such as put it down, carry it out. And he must have been a very sincere Zen practitioner, because he stayed with his teacher Nan Chuan for 40 years, very devoted to his teacher that he met at around age 20. And when Zhaozhou was around 60 years old, his teacher died. And then he felt, now I can go on pilgrimage and meet other teachers in the Zen world that was thriving in China at that time. So then 60-year-old Zhaozhou walked around China for another 20 years, just meeting with other teachers. And when he was 80, his sandals were so worn down that he thought he should stop and settle down. So he did so, and then he stayed in a little temple for the next 40 years and taught students until he was 120, as the story goes. Zhaozhou's monastery is still thriving in China. Maybe I shouldn't say still, because there was I think many centuries when maybe nobody was practicing there. But it's been revived and is now one of the main really thriving monasteries in China. I practiced there for a week one time. So here's an old story about Zhaozhou. A saying of Zhaozhou in the Dharma talk. A wooden Buddha can't pass through fire. A clay Buddha can't pass through water. A metal Buddha can't pass through a furnace. The real Buddha sits within. Sometimes these are called the 3 turning words of Zhaozhou about fabricated Buddhas made of wood, made of clay, and made of metal. Fabricated Buddhas look nice, but they have trouble when they encounter fire, water, and furnaces. The real Buddha is not fabricated, sitting within. Zhaozhou continues the same talk. It says, awakening, nirvana, suchness, Buddha nature. These things are just clothes stuck to the body, just afflictions. The fabricated awakening, the fabricated nirvana, any thought we have about suchness and Buddha nature are like just clothes stuck to a sweaty body. How can we strip them off? Zhaozhou says, where is the true ground revealed? Big mind is unborn and all things are pure. Just sit for 20 or 30 years, and if you still don't understand, that you can cut off my head. That's one saying of Zhaozhou. It's kind of related to today's story. In contemporary times, Uchiyama Roshi also said something like, well, just sit for 10 years. And then after that, what would be good to do? Just sit for another 10 years. And after that, then what? Just sit for another 10 years. Just like Zhaozhou. Zhaozhou had a long life, right? 30 years of sitting is a small fraction of a 120-year life. But in fact, if Zhaozhou started when he was 20, I guess he sat for 100 years. But when Uchiyama Roshi says this, he says, after 30 years, you should have a kind of a general sense of the landscape of Zazen. And Zhaozhou says, at that point, if you still don't understand, you can cut off his head. Which is, I think, just a way of saying he's so confident that you will understand that he'll risk his head over it. So Yanyang comes to Zhaozhou in this story and says, when not a single thing is brought, then what? Or how is it when nothing at all comes up? That's Kaz Tanahashi's translation. How is it when nothing comes up? And Zhaozhou said, put it down. Drop it, let it go, release, free it, put it down, let go of everything, let go of big issues, and let go of subtle issues. So this is a Zen story about kind of letting go of a kind of a subtle issue. It looks like Yanyang was like right on the edge of awakening when he came to Zhaozhou, because he awakened at the end of the story. So he was right there on the edge, it seems to me, and yet he felt like when there's nothing at all, just like the Heart Sutra says, when there is no eyes, no ears, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, when there's not a single thing, and when I don't bring a single thing to make it more kind of personal, when nothing is arising from me, then what, teacher? Here I am, this is it. Now, how is it? I think he came with a very confident attitude, Yanyang did. And Zhaozhou kind of knocked that away by saying, put it down. So even this subtle, like, I've realized emptiness, is kind of the gist of maybe what Yanyang is saying. How about that, teacher? Put it down. So even a great understanding has to be put down. But before we get to that point, everything leading up to that, of course, needs to be put down. Like eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and so on. And I think this is a wonderful Zen story because it's kind of like the heart of the matter, I would say. It's the heart of Zen practice. Put it down, let it go, release it, drop it off. One could say that this is a basic practice, not only Zen, but all of Buddha Dharma. The Buddha in his earliest teachings said that holding on is the root of all suffering, is the root of all greed, hate, and delusion. Holding anything up. So if we're holding anything up, contentment is impossible. And so out of great compassion, Zhaozhou said, just put it down. Whatever it is, moment to moment. It's not a one-time thing, of course. This was Dogen's awakening, a very similar flavor, right? Dogen heard his teacher say, how can you drop off body and mind if you're sleeping? Dogen's teacher said to another monk in the Zendo who was kind of dozing. When Dogen heard that, body and mind dropped off. Or I could say he put down body and mind. So this one phrase, put it down, is two Chinese characters, Fang Xia or Hou Ka. After some centuries after Zhaozhou's time, people started using this phrase of Zhaozhou as like an essential phrase to become one with. There's this tradition of using a huado, or a critical phrase, a key word, a key phrase, a key that unlocks reality. And so this is about 1,000 years ago. There were many of these like short sayings. Maybe the most famous is another one of Zhaozhou's. Zhaozhou was asked, does a dog have Buddha nature or not? Zhaozhou said, no. It's one word, no, is another critical phrase. But apparently a popular one was from this story today, put it down. Same meaning as no. Maybe a little easier to relate to, actually. Maybe even before getting into Zen, we might have heard things like, just drop it. Very simple. So it seems like for the last 1,000 years in China, mostly, the Zen practitioners sometimes would use just put it down as a phrase in Zazen, even. Like when the mind starts wandering, what's going on? Oh, put it down. Put it down. We don't need to say that, we can just put it down. But sometimes the phrase is a reminder. And in contemporary times, Zen teacher Yanyang, who was one who brought Chinese Zen to America, was once, he tells this story that he was a novice monk for a little while, and then there was some war going on. So he felt compelled to join the army, put down his monastic practice. But then when he got to the army, he felt, this is not quite right. What am I doing here? He started to have more and more doubts about being in the army. And meanwhile, while he was in the army, he was studying Buddha Dharma and practicing Zazen. And he started having more and more doubts about all the various details and aspects of Buddha Dharma. Because there's 84,000 aspects of Buddha Dharma to clarify. He started having doubts and more doubts. And he's really struggling with being in the army. And what he really wanted to do was go back to the monastery. and struggling with how to practice and what is truth and so on. And in the midst of his turmoil, I can't quite remember the story, but I think it was like he was in some army like barracks, or maybe there were prisoners of war. For some reason, he ended up being housed while he was in the army with a Zen teacher, a kind of prominent Zen teacher. And maybe he knew him, or I think if he didn't know him, it became obvious that he was a Zen practitioner, because as people went to sleep in the barracks, the Zen teacher just kept sitting zazen. So young Shenyang went to this teacher, and maybe he can help me resolve my 84,000 doubts. Excuse me, I know you're sitting zazen, but do you mind if I ask you some about Dharma and practice? Because it's really, I'm kind of at the end of my rope here. And I think it was Ling Yuan, who's his teacher. And he said, okay, ask away. Shenyang said, well, I'm wondering about this and that and zazen, and what about this, and what about being in the army? And Ling said, first Shenyang asked a whole bunch of questions, and then he said, well, is there anything more? And Shenyang says, yeah, there's a lot more. And started asking more and more questions, piling up hundreds of questions. And apparently Ling Yuan just kept saying, well, is there any more? Shenyang says, yeah, there is more. Like unloading his like aching heart of Dharma questions for a while, apparently. And then at some point, I guess Ling Yuan said, is there anything more? And Shenyang said, no, that's enough. Now, like, I'm ready for the 3-hour Dharma talk now. Lay it out. And Ling Yuan said, put it down. And this was like a breakthrough for Shenyang. All his doubt had been kind of unloaded onto this teacher, waiting for a big conceptual explanation. And all he got was put it down. And it worked for Shenyang. In that situation that he was in at that time, it was the perfect, skillful means. He put it down and was very happy afterwards. And then he left the army, went back, kind of reordained again, and practiced for many years, and with both Soto and Rinzai practitioners in China, and eventually became the Dharma heir of that teacher that he met in the bunkers, wherever it was. So that's Zhaozhou's old phrase, helping out somebody in our era. And then Shenyang had many students, and one of them is named Guogu. He's got a Zen center in Florida today. And after Shenyang, Guogu was like Shenyang's attendant for many years. And when Shenyang died, they did a long, many-week sesshin to kind of, I guess, a memorial. And Guogu was in this sesshin. And he was, although Guogu mostly practiced this silent illumination, and just a little side note plug here, Guogu wrote maybe like a year ago, came out with a new book called Silent Illumination. And I think it's one of the greatest modern teachings on just sitting that we practice. It's very fresh, kind of an unusual take. So I recommend his book. silent illumination. But at this time, Guogu was practicing with Zhaozhou's no. There's many ways to practice. Yanyang said, after Guogu had been doing the silent illumination practice for decades, his teacher said, you got that down. Take up this Zhaozhou. Does a dog have Buddha nature? No, just to get familiar with another kind of practice. So devotion to his teacher, Guogu, is really like immersed after several weeks of sesshin in what is this no? What is this no? And he worked himself into quite a state, I guess, where he describes as like he didn't know where he was or what he was doing. And they were doing fast walking meditation in the Chinese style, as they strike a chord on the ground and everybody stops. It's the form. But Guogu was so kind of lost in what is this no, that he just kept running around a circle around the altar, kind of lost, not even knowing he was running apparently. And then he went up to somebody and said, where's the head monk? I have to see him right now. And he said, he's upstairs. So Guogu went upstairs and met the head monk and was like, what is this? No! And the head monk said, guess what? Put it down. And Guogu said something like, everything flushed out of his system and just dropped away, and it was like total peace. So there's interesting, I think, that Guogu's teacher, Yanyang, had this kind of pivotal moment with this phrase of Zhaozhou's, put it down, simple phrase, put it down, at the right moment. And then Guogu, even though he was working on a different critical phrase, no, his other teacher said, put that down. And that was just right for Guogu. So there's many others, phrases like this too, that sum it all up. One song, the commentator of the Book of Serenity said, as for Zhaozhou's two turning words, put it down and carry it out, you must pull out your tendons, extract your marrow, change your bones, and wash your guts. Then you can walk hand in hand with Zhaozhou. So these are some good phrases, good sayings. Put it down and carry it out. But there's many others that point in the same direction. Especially how put it down is used in this story about this a little bit of concept left, right? A little bit of holding an explanation of nothing's coming up. I'm not bringing anything here. A little bit of conceptual overlay needs to be put down. Like Bodhidharma's student Huika said, I'm always clearly aware and words don't reach it. My teacher, Tenshin Roshi, when commenting on this saying of Huika, likes to say, I'm always clearly aware, and there's words circling around, I don't know, like a flock of birds or something. They're huge whirlwind of words circling around this clear awareness, but they don't reach it. That's his commentary. So it doesn't mean there are no words, it's just that the words don't reach it. And another contemporary of Zhaozhou named Yun Men was kind of into the same point frequently, it seemed like. He said, even a great person, a great realized practitioner is still tossed around in the sea of words. This is challenging. And we need to use words. How can we not be tossed around in the sea of words? And a monk once asked Yun Men, when not a single thought arises, is there any fault or not? Almost the same question as Yanyang, right, in this today's story. When not a single thought arises, is there any fault or not? And Yun Men said, Mount Sumeru, the huge mountain at the center of the universe, towering over everything. Yun Men also said, even a thought like nothing could ever go beyond this is still a kind of sickness, a kind of Zen sickness. Thinking to ourselves, yeah, this is it. Still a kind of sickness. This is the subtlety that the ancient ancestors were trying to help us release. One time, my teacher, Tenshin Roshi, said, I was thinking about priest ordination. And he said, a priest should be willing to let go of everything. Maybe we could say, a priest should be willing to put down everything. And I wasn't sure if I could do that, but I wanted to. Because I didn't know really that holding anything up was just miserable. But I wasn't sure if I could actually do it. So I worked with that for a while. Maybe years, I can't, definitely months. But for quite a while, I thought, I'm not really willing to even ask to be ordained until I can have some approach to this request. You should be willing to put down everything. And I felt like, I don't think I'm really willing. What does that mean, to let go of everything? I don't think he meant you shouldn't have any things. You have to follow this and that rule and stuff. I think it was more of an internal thing. Like, am I willing to let go of everything? Doesn't even mean are you letting go of everything? Just, are you willing? I wouldn't even know if I was willing. But I wanted to be. Right? So after a long time, I was a Tassajara, he was a Tassajara. It must have been a practice period. And I finally felt one day, and it wasn't even like in a sashimi or anything, it was like a day off. Like one day, on the day off, I just felt, actually feel like I can say this honestly, in this moment. I don't know if I'll be able to say it tomorrow, but right now I feel like I'm willing to let go of everything. And this might not last. So I want to tell my teacher right away. And it was a day off, so I should really give him a break, because he's meeting with people all the time on the days on. But I couldn't wait, so I just went right to his cabin and knocked on the door, and he opened it. And I just prostrated my body on the floor and said, okay, I'm willing to give up everything. What next? What now? Kind of like Yanyang. When I don't bring a single thing, then what? It was kind of that sort of feeling, I think. Now what? Here I am present. I'm kind of like, if you tell me to jump off a cliff, I hope I'm ready. Now what? He said, well, there's a door right over there. You could just start walking and just walk right out the door. So that's what I did, right? I was willing to let go of anything else. Like maybe he'll just ordain me on the spot or something, right? Okay, I'll just walk out the door. I walked out the door and I kept walking for a little while, and then I just kind of stood there and thought, wow, I feel so okay. And what should I do now? I don't really know. I'm just kind of standing at the crossroads of Tassajara. And well, I think it's around lunchtime. Maybe I'll have my bag lunch. Yeah. Went on with the rest of my life. There have been many times since then that I was not willing to let go. I really didn't want to put it down. But it is my vow to be willing for the benefit of all beings. It might sound strange, but I even feel like this may be the greatest gift I can offer to all beings, is being willing to put it down. So that's today's story. Oh, and we didn't talk so much about, well, then carry it out. Just to briefly, I'd say, well, if I don't bring anything, then how can I put it down? Kind of like a little bit, sort of like arguing, right? Don't tell me to put it down, teacher, if I don't have anything. And he said, well, then carry it away with you. Which I think is just a beautiful response, because Zhaozhou didn't fight back with his student. He didn't say, you're still holding on. I said, put it down. He didn't say that, right? So skillful, I think, Zhaozhou. Okay, well then carry it away with you. Take it with you. And again, it was just the right thing for Yanyang to hear at that time. Maybe if Zhaozhou had said, you're still holding on, I said put it down, they would have got into a fight, and Yanyang would have been the opposite of awakened. But because his teacher was gentle, okay, you can take it with you. It's a wonderful story.